All right, so the next one here, Trump on the Gaza slaughter, he says, finish the problem. So former President Donald Trump, who is, now that Nikki Haley's dropped out, I mean, I guess maybe it's not official yet, but he is going to be the GOP candidate for 2024. And he said in an interview with Fox and Friends on Tuesday that he supports Israel's military operations in Gaza. And so I haven't seen him talk about this much. All I've seen is him saying, oh, this would have never happened if I was still president. And he says that a lot about Ukraine. He doesn't really say much about what he's going to do. Everything is kind of just about, oh, what could have been if he was president. So when he was asked this question by one of the Fox and Friends hosts, who the way that they framed it was, oh, Biden's abandoning Israel. You're not going to abandon Israel, right? And one host said, because you're firmly in Israel's camp on this, right? Like talking about Gaza. And Trump said, yeah. And then the host asked Trump if he was on board with the way the Israeli military was carrying out its campaign. And Trump replied, quote, you've got to finish the problem. You had a horrible invasion that took place. That would never have happened if I was president, by the way, end quote. And that's basically all he said, again, about what's actually happening, instead of everything else was just about, oh, if I was president, it wouldn't happen. But I think it's clear that based on his record when he was president, that he's going to give Israel everything that it wants. He did not elaborate on his position at all. And then he was asked whether or not he would support a ceasefire. He basically was asked, would you support a ceasefire? Is that totally out of the realm of possibilities? And he dodged the question, basically. He said, quote, look, I hate seeing what's happening. Again, it would have never happened. This attack on Israel, and likewise Israel's counterattack, which is what it is, would have never happened if I was president, end quote. So he just keeps going back to that. And I just put a few examples here of how pro-Israel he was as a president. He carried out several policies to support Israel's claims to occupied land, big moves, including recognizing the Golan Heights, which Israel annexed from Syria. He recognized that as Israeli territory. His administration declared that illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank do not violate international law. His administration also moved the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And he unveiled, I don't know if a lot of you remember this, but Trump put out this peace plan that was basically made up by Jared Kushner that he called the deal of the century. And this peace plan for the Israelis and the Palestinians was just a nightmare. I mean, if you look at the map here, I linked to a piece from Jonathan Cook about when this came out. This was in 2020, January 2020. And you see the map of what would become Israeli and Palestinian territory. It's basically Israel would have annexed a huge swath of the West Bank, the Jordan Valley, all of its settlements, and there would have been Israeli-only access roads. It was just a complete non-starter of a peace deal, and of course it was rejected by the Palestinians right away. And at the time when it came out, Netanyahu was saying, I like it, I'm going to annex these areas, I'm going to do it, but he never actually went ahead with it. But just again, with Trump, this is one thing. With Biden, he's so pro-Israel and so supportive of this slaughter in Gaza. Trump is probably going to be as well. And, depending on who he puts in his administration, all this concern about humanitarian aid that we see, or the phone, they act like they're concerned, at least in the Biden administration, and they do these aid drops. We might not even see that with the Trump administration. But there's a lot of ifs there. Who knows who he's going to surround himself with? And a lot could change between now and November. It could be a completely different situation.
But the non-committed vote that Biden's getting, they're not going to like you either, because you are firmly in Israel's camp, correct? Are you on board with the way the IDF is taking the fight in Gaza?
You've got to finish the problem. You had a horrible invasion. It took place. It would have never happened if I was president, by the way. As you know, Iran was broke, Brian. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas, for Hezbollah. They were broke. This would have never happened. And for another reason, they wouldn't have done it to me. I guarantee you that. They did this because they have no respect for Biden. And frankly, they got soft. And what happened here is incredible. That should never have happened. Likewise,